Hey everyone, if you're new here, my name's Lottie, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back to my channel. I kinda can't believe it's already time to film my October wrap up. The year is absolutely flying by. It's literally gonna be Christmas before we know it. Enough looking ahead, today's video is about reflecting. I'm gonna be sharing all my thoughts on the 11 books that I read in October. I honestly kinda had a lot of mixed emotions about the books I read this month, so let's get into all the highs and lows. I always like to start these videos by quickly going over my monthly reading stats. In October, I read 11 books. The genre breakdown is 5 romance, 2 romantasy, 2 mystery thriller, and 2 literary fiction. My page count totaled to about 4,316 pages. My average rating for the month ended up being about a 3.52, which is lower than last month. So I read more this month, but I didn't necessarily read better. I was really proud of 11 books though. I don't think I'd read that much in 1 month since like early summer, which is really good for me. And just checking in on my 2024 Goodreads goal, I actually ended up raising it to 75 back, I think in August, and I hit 70 this month. So I'm ahead of schedule to hit 75. I feel like I'm gonna be able to do that pretty easily, but I don't know if I'll be able to make it to 100, which I feel like is the next milestone. Maybe I'll make it like 90. I don't know, we'll see. But enough about stats, let's get into the recap. The first book I picked up in October was You Again by Kate Goldbeck. Is this not just the most stunning cover? I'm obsessed with this artwork. It's incredible. All I knew about this book going in is that it's supposed to be kind of like a modern When Harry Met Sally, and I definitely love that movie, so I was interested by the premise. This book follows Ari and Josh, and it's very slice of life, as you would imagine if you've seen When Harry Met Sally. And because of that, it can be kind of boring at times. It's definitely very character driven and not very plot driven. And the tricky thing about this book being character driven is that the characters are pretty unlikable. But to me, that made them a lot more human and layered and interesting. They weren't just unlikable for the sake of being unlikable. They had their own quirks, similarities, differences, personalities that I thought kind of brought the story to life in a pretty realistic way. I liked Josh a bit more than I liked Ari. That's because Josh is a little bit of like a type A kind of guy, and I resonate with that personality trait. I'm very like detail oriented, and he kind of felt the same to me, where Ari in this book is much more like artistic and free spirited, and so I didn't resonate with her like chaos as much. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like a Sally Rooney book. The characters are definitely very modern. I also think some people who are like diehard When Harry Met Sally fans think it's disgraceful to compare this to When Harry Met Sally, because it's definitely not the same thing, but it is kind of that same vibe of like being in each other's orbit for many years before your romance actually starts, if that makes sense. And it's like New York, they have mutual friends, stuff like that. And speaking of the mutual friends, I really liked some of the humor of the side characters in this book. I felt like that added a bit of charm to it for me as well. Like the main character, Josh, his sister, was kind of funny to me. She was a little bit cringy, but something about her vibe I just thought was funny at the same time. So honestly, I'd heard a lot of bad reviews about this book. I think so many people had DNF'd it or said they didn't really connect with the characters. I did go in with pretty low expectations. I feel like it exceeded my expectations just a little bit. Overall, I just found this kind of like cozy and chill. I went into it knowing it was going to be more slice of life, more character driven. So I think if that's something you're interested in, you might like this. But if you're someone who much prefers like a solid plot, especially with romance books, maybe not the one for you. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, which is a little bit high. Maybe it's more of like a 3.75. I don't know. I try not to get too hung up on like exactly what I'm rating it, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. I think if you just want like a cozy fall book, this is a pretty good one, honestly. I don't think it deserves like all the hate it's getting. The next book I read was Margo's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe. And spoiler alert, but this was my standout read of the month. 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. This is a really, really quick read. It's like under 300 pages. It's short and sweet, and I think it's a great introduction to literary fiction if that's a genre you're a little bit intimidated by or interested in getting more into. I found this book so charming and witty and fresh. This book follows Margo as she's navigating adulthood, new motherhood, and also her dwindling bank account, as the title suggests. She actually ends up starting an OnlyFans as an experiment, and you get to kind of see her navigate that experience as well. I found this book funny. It's really just about like making the most of what you got. I actually listened to a lot of it on audiobook, and Dakota Fanning actually narrates the audiobook. She was so good, you guys. The audiobook was incredible. Like, please, if you take one audiobook recommendation from this video, it's Margo's Got Money Troubles. It's actually really interesting too, because Margo is the one telling this story, and she flips between third person and first person. So some chapters she's telling the story as if she's not Margot. And then some chapters she's telling it like she's experiencing it in the moment. And I actually thought that was a really cool choice. This book has a lot of themes about like storytelling, crafting a compelling narrative, because the baby daddy of Margot's child was actually her college professor. You find that out super early in the book, but you kind of get to hear some of like the English lit lessons that they're having, and a lot of it has to do with that. And then she also gets some advice from her dad, who was an ex-pro wrestler, about like bringing a compelling narrative to life and like what makes an audience gravitate towards someone, things like that. So I don't know, I just found the themes in this book really interesting as well, and I felt like it all tied together so wonderfully. I just ate this up, loved it. Give it a try. If you feel like you would hate the OnlyFans aspect, maybe not the one for you, but I found it really messy yet touching, and it was just such an original story. Dakota Fanning is actually going to play Margo in the Apple TV adaptation. I think it's going to come out next year, and it really brought the story to life for me having Dakota Fanning read the audiobook as well. She was just such a great fit, I feel like, for the voice of Margo. So I'm sat for that. I cannot wait. My favorite read of October, which was very surprising, by the way. Like, I was not expecting to love this as much as I did, so proud to report we got a 5-star this month, guys. All right, next we got Iron Flame. This book is a chunker. It's like 600 plus pages, but I don't know. I have so many thoughts. I finished Fourth Wing at the end of September, so I forced myself to read You Again and Margot's Got Money Troubles before I could get back to this one. And then when I finally got back to it, I was just ready to devour it. And I was really enjoying the first like 100 pages, but then I was just kind of like, ugh, this feels like a snooze fest. This book wasn't really what I expected it to be. My friend Allison actually has a theory that Fourth Wing is supposed to be like, I think she said a duology, but then the book absolutely blew up and they turned it into a multi-book series. So this one ended up being a little bit more of like a filler. And while there definitely was a lot of action that happened in this one, there was a whole lot of nothing in the middle. My other critique of this series in general is that I do not really vibe with the battle scenes that Rebecca Yarros writes. And maybe this is a me problem, but I haven't had this problem with other fantasy books that I've read. I just get really disoriented, especially towards the end of the books. I feel like I'm rereading pages. I get kind of lost. I try to convince myself it doesn't really matter and keep going, but then I end up going back and trying to reread it. And it just kind of takes me out of it at the end, which can be a little bit frustrating for a book I invest so much time in. So again, maybe that's a me problem, but I'm curious if anyone else feels that way. I think this one also is like somewhere between a 3.75 and a 4-star. I didn't like it as much as Fourth Wing. I feel like it's kind of a consensus among a lot of reviewers I've seen that most people liked Fourth Wing more than Iron Flame, which is honestly such a bummer because I feel like so often the first book kind of sets everything up, and then the second book you really can like get into the politics and the romance and the drama, and it just builds on itself and gets even better. As soon as I finished this one, I went and searched up like Fourth Wing and Iron Flame TikTok memes. That's definitely my favorite part of finishing this. I just feel caught up on all the hype. I enjoyed it though. I still like ate it up, read it so fast. It's fun. Okay, next I read 4 books in one weekend. So if you haven't seen my 24-hour readathon vlog that I did in October, definitely check that video out. It has more in-depth reviews of the next 4 books I'm going to speak about and real-time reading reactions. So I'm going to try to go through these just a little bit faster since I have already talked about them on my channel. The first book that I read during the 24-hour readathon was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I included this in the genre breakdown as litfic, but it's definitely also mystery. I feel like it's half and half, and honestly kind of even like historical litfic. I think this is probably my other standout read from the month, but I didn't quite get that 5-star feeling with this one, so I think I'm gonna land on like a 4.25 or 4.5. I found this very entertaining and like nourishing as a book, if that makes sense. I don't know, sometimes after a book I read it, I'm like, ugh, why did I waste my time on that? Did not feel that way about this at all. Some of the big themes in this book are class, privilege, self-reliance. It's set at a summer camp in the Adirondacks, and it takes place during the summer of 1975, but there are dual timelines with a few flashbacks in like, I think the 60s. But basically this camp counselor wakes up in her cabin and realizes one of her campers is missing, but not just any camper, it's the daughter of the camp owners. I know, right? This book just kind of follows the investigation of her going missing. But the crazy thing is that Barbara's older brother, Bear, actually went missing from the campgrounds himself 14 years earlier and was never found. So this is kind of crazy to say the least. I definitely think I like this book a lot more reading it in the context of a 24-hour reading challenge. I think this book would have felt really long if I had read it in just like a normal context. It's like close to 500 pages, and for a mystery, it's like, why is it so long? And I think that's why I put it more in the litfic category, because it reads like a literary fiction despite the crux of the plot being a mystery. Overall, I really love this. If you like literary fiction, historical fiction, mysteries, and are down for a little bit of a longer read, but one that's going to feel really fulfilling, the themes in this book all tied together with a beautiful bow, then pick this one up. The next book I read during the 24-hour reading challenge was The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. I had so much fun reading this. If you didn't know, I'm from Atlanta, so I loved this was set in Georgia. It felt very close to home. While I was reading it, I could just picture it as the cutest little spooky movie. It just has the absolute perfect vibes for fall. The romance in this book was kind of meh to me, but honestly, I wasn't reading it for the romance. I was reading it for the atmosphere and like the witchy plot. This has definitely been the best seasonal book I've picked up for spooky season this year. So if you didn't get to it this year, definitely put it on your list for next year. I think it's just cute. It didn't take itself too seriously and it was just a vibe. I did give this book 3 stars, but I definitely still recommend it. The lower-ish rating is just because it wasn't like a literary masterpiece. The third book I read for the 24-hour reading challenge was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. It was just not my cup of tea. I just feel like I wasn't vibing with this book kind of from the start, despite being in a huge fall seasonal reading mood, which then made me think maybe I just don't like vampires that much. But I did get really into the Vampire Diaries when I was in college. Like, I love that series. I don't think it's about the vampires. I think it's about the story and the writing. And I think this one just didn't quite click for me, and that's okay. I still really like Ali Hazelwood and her writing. I think one of my main gripes with this book is I wish it had been dual POV. I think that would have helped a lot. I just felt like we didn't really know our main male character that well. He was very elusive. And while I liked our main female character, I think I would have enjoyed the romance portion of this book more if I'd kind of seen both of their perspectives. I gave it 2 stars, and I think I'm just gonna keep it at that. But while I was reading it, it just felt so unserious. Yet a lot of the plot was like very high stakes. So then, I don't know, it just was like a weird combo of vibes for me. All that to say, I'm definitely still gonna read more of Ali Hazelwood's new releases. This one just wasn't my favorite. And the last book that I read for the 24-hour reading challenge, I read on my Kindle through Kindle Unlimited, and that was The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. I was feeling so slumpy by the end of this challenge. I was so over reading, and I decided to try out Frida's new release because I know she's always got my back when I'm feeling slumpy. And that she did. This book truly saved the day for the last few hours of my reading challenge. And for that, I want to give it a round of applause. When you're just not feeling like reading, I think she's a great author to help you kind of get excited about a book again. She does such a great job hooking you in. This book wasn't necessarily one of my favorites from her. I definitely think I liked the Housemaid series better. If you haven't read that one, you should definitely start there. But The Boyfriend still had me locked in. I was glued to my Kindle. I think the dual timeline aspect of this book worked really well, and the twist at the end definitely got me. It was crazy. It was fun. It was not that deep. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's more like a 3.5 or a 3.75, but I'm giving it 4 because I want to give it some extra points for how much it turned my mood around after reading Bride. I want to give it credit where credit's due. The next 2 books I included in my autumn bookish vlog. So if you want to see my real-time reactions and reviews, definitely go watch that. So the next book I read in October was Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I ended up putting this one on my October TBR, and it was one that I was kind of dreading, but for some reason I was drawn to pick it up after I finished the 24-hour reading challenge. I feel like I went into this book with pretty low expectations. Because I hadn't heard the best things, it made me like it just a little bit more. I ended up giving this one a 3.75 stars. It was almost a 4, but just not quite. This book honestly to me wasn't that scary. It was definitely a mystery. Dare I say it was even a little cozy. This book's set in the summer, another like summer thriller. Not too different from God of the Woods, honestly, because this one is about 2 boys who go camping, and overnight the boys' tent is slashed and one of the boys is taken and never seen again. So again, kind of a missing person mystery that's set in the summer and has like camp vibes. God of the Woods is set at an actual summer camp. This one was just 2 boys camping in their backyard, but now that I'm really thinking about it, they're kind of similar. Definitely different stories and plot lines though, for sure. This book has dual timeline between the night Billy, the boy, was taken, and then the present day where the other boy in the tent who wasn't taken, what was his name? Ethan, returned to the scene of the crime 30 years later and is kind of reinvestigating what happened to Billy. So you're just kind of following Ethan as he's trying to unravel what really happened that night. I think my review for this in one sentence is just like a good solid mystery thriller. This is better than the other book that I read from Riley Sager, which is The House Across the Lake. I would definitely recommend this one above that one, but I also want to read The Only One Left from Riley Sager. I've heard the best things about that one, so I want to put it on my TBR. Then I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore. This book went absolutely viral on Book Talk and BookTube this fall, and I think it's because of the cover. The cover is honestly so adorable. This book is part of a larger series from Lori Gilmore called the Dream Harbor series because it's set in a small town called, you guessed it, Dream Harbor. My one sentence review for this book is the vibes were vibing, but the plot was not plotting. The whole book just felt so obviously based on Stars Hollow, but it kind of made it to where the book didn't really feel like its own thing to me, more so that it was just trying really hard to be like something that already exists. Our 2 characters I think were loosely based on Lorelai and Luke from Gilmore Girls, but their names in this book are Jeannie and Logan. Jeannie basically takes over running her aunt's pumpkin spice cafe, and for a lot of the book, she's just kind of like getting acclimated to the town, figuring out how to run the cafe, and then the romance was just very insta-love. And there just wasn't a whole lot of plot with the romance, honestly. It was just kind of like, oh, we like each other, let's start dating, the end. Like, I don't know. I ended up giving Pumpkin Spice Cafe 2.5 stars. I am begrudgingly going to continue this series. I put the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, which is book 2 in the series, on my November TBR, so stay tuned to see if it gets better. Book 10 that I read in October was Leather and Lark from Bryn Weaver. This is the second book in the Ruinous Love trilogy, so it comes after Butcher and Blackbird, if you've heard of that one. This book is about Lark and Lachlan. Lachlan is a contract killer, and then Lark, I don't even know what she does. She's kind of like a Nepo baby, low-key. I think she sings, question mark, like in a band. This book, what tropes does it have? Kind of like Grumpy Sunshine, for sure. I guess Marriage of Convenience, but more so like forced proximity / forced marriage. Enemies to lovers kind of vibes. I have such mixed feelings about this book. I went from hating it to loving it, back to hating it, back to loving it. Like every other chapter, I was so confused on how I was feeling. I don't think I liked it as much as the first book, Butcher and Blackbird, but I did still like it, question mark. I'd seen so many bad reviews for this one. I feel like half of the Goodreads reviews were people DNFing it, and so that definitely skewed my opinion, I think, going into it. I did kind of like the couple. I wasn't ever like dying to pick this back up, which for me is like never a great sign. But once I did pick it up and I was reading, I was vibing. I also listened to some of this on audiobook as well. It was free through the library, and I really, really liked the audiobook. And there's 2 different narrators in the audiobook, one for Lachlan and one for Lark. And our main male character is Irish, I'm pretty sure. And the narrator for Lachlan has like a broody Irish accent. So that really brought it to life for me. It's fun when that's incorporated in the audiobook, and I definitely liked that. I think if you absolutely love the first book, you should read the next one. But if you just were like, the first book was okay, I liked it, this one kind of has the same vibes as that. I think the novelty of the concept had kind of worn off. So I gave this one 3 stars, which is a little bit lower than my rating for Butcher and Blackbird, but by no means was it like a bad book. And it's just always good to get caught up on a series I'm in the middle of. And the 11th and final book that I read in October was Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I actually read this book in my latest vlog. I think it's called a festive fall vlog, something like that. But I was trying to do a challenge where I finished my TBR in the last couple days of the month. So I needed to read this one and one other book, but I actually only got to this one. This is the second book in the like Assistant to the Villain series. I read book 1 in September and then wanted to go ahead and get through book 2 before I like forgot what was going on in the plot. And book 1 ended on a pretty big like plot cliffhanger, which is why I got roped into reading this one. Honestly, I probably shouldn't have read this considering I wasn't like obsessed with the first one. I think one of my lessons of this month is like I don't need to continue series where I thought book 1 was just okay. I just kind of liked it. Sometimes I just get optimistic that I'm gonna like the next book even more and it's gonna be better. If you absolutely ate the first book up, you should read this, but if you just kind of liked it, maybe skip. It's a romantasy book, but honestly, it's not even that heavy on the romance. The romance is definitely a big part of the plot, but it's not spicy like in the slightest. Definitely reads as YA. I think this is a fun book. It's kind of set in a fantasy world similar to like Shrek in my mind, where it's just like silly and whimsical and not that serious. But this was just another one of those books where I just like wasn't dying to pick it up, which again is just like not a great sign. If you're unfamiliar with the series, I spoke about the first book in last month's wrap up, so you get more info on it there. This book is set in the fictional kingdom of Renadon, and this book follows Evie Sage, who ends up working as originally the assistant for the quote-unquote villain in Renadon, who looms large and does evil things, and she has a huge crush on him and he's like totally obsessed with her, but neither of them really act on it. It reads a lot like a workplace romance in some regards. I think at the end of the day though, these characters feel like caricatures. They feel kind of surface level to me, even though I think there's an effort in the writing to make them more layered and complex. I don't know, I guess I'm just not buying it. I also just don't love the writing style in this book series. It just isn't one that really resonates for me for whatever reason. I think it's just like, to me, a bit of a rambly writing style. I do think this is a fun series, and if you're trying to get back into reading, this could be one that you really like. It's very low stakes and cozy and just like fun and silly. I don't know if I'll read the third book. I think it's going to come out next fall, called Accomplice to the Villain. I think I'll just see how I'm feeling when it comes out, but those are my thoughts on book 2. Again, nice to get through another series I'm in the middle of. Check that one off. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about all those books for so long. If you've read any of the books that I read in October, definitely let me know in the comments what you thought about them. And also let me know what your favorite book from the month of October that you read was too. Plus, if you made it this far in the video, comment down below with the nerd emoji so I can know who made it to the end. I think that's gonna be it for today's video. Be sure you subscribe to my channel down below if you're new here so you don't miss a video from me. me, and I'll see you very soon in my next one. Bye, everyone.